Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto at the 8 Tails Part 5. Last time on the What If, Naruto and Sasuke passed the 2.5 exam of the Chunin exams, and shortly afterward, Naruto met an old man by the name of Jiraiya, who undid his extra seal, and he taught Naruto the summoning jutsu by throwing him off a cliff. Okay, so now that's out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we skip past the rest of the month's training, and the training Naruto did was training how to use more of the 8 Tails' power. So he's more skilled at sprouting his tentacles. He is also more skilled at shooting out ink and making clones with it. He also knows how to control more of the 8 Tails' chakra, with him now being able to make stronger chakra tentacles. So now it's the day of the final part of the exam, and when the exams began, Naruto noticed that Sasuke wasn't there yet, but before he could think too much of it, the main examiner told the public the name for the first match, which was Naruto and Neji. And when their names were called, the rest of the examinees left the arena, while Naruto and Neji went to the other sides of the arena. And when everything was ready, the match began. And the second it started, Naruto shot out 2 tentacles, and when they were fully formed, he ran at Neji, who was waiting for him. And trying to blind him, Naruto shot out ink at Neji, but right before it hit, Neji moved out of the way, and he ran at Naruto. And once a couple of seconds he had, before Naruto would attack again, Neji was able to hit Naruto with a gentle fist in his shoulder. And when he hit Naruto, Naruto fell to his knees. But before Neji could do anything, Naruto made the ink he shot earlier turn into clones of himself. And when they were able to, they ran at Neji, which made him distracted for a couple of seconds, before he damaged them enough to make them turn back to normal. And with the time Naruto had, he was able to get up, and he shot out more ink around the arena, preparing himself in case that happens again. And when Naruto saw that Neji destroyed his clones, Naruto made around 20 shadow clones, which ran at Neji. But Neji, seeing this, just ran through them, and he went for the real Naruto, who was behind the group. And when he got to him, he hit him with an 8 trigram 64 palm, hitting most of Naruto's chakra points. And when Naruto got hit, the clones Naruto made disappeared. And when Neji was done with the attack, Naruto fell to the ground face first, and after a couple of seconds, the main examiner started to count down from 10 to end the match. And when he got to 5, Naruto was able to pick himself back up. And when he was fully standing, Neji and Naruto began to talk about fate. And by the end of the conversation, Neji says that Naruto will never be the Hokage, since he's not destined to. And hearing this, Naruto got mad, so he decided that he was done holding back. So he started to cover himself with the 8 Tails chakra, to the point where he now has 2 chakra tentacles. Then Naruto made 3 shadow clones, and they all ran at Neji. And unable to dodge the attack, Neji used 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven around the 4, launching them a couple of feet. And since they ran at Neji as fast as they could, the clones got destroyed. And the real Naruto was injured, but he was able to continue since he cushioned his fall with his tentacles. Naruto then grabbed 3 kunais from his and he ran at Neji with a kunai in each tentacle and one in his right hand. And the two began to fight using solely kunais. And whenever Naruto felt like he was going to get hit, he would back up, and he would make an ink clone to fight Neji until they got destroyed using the ink around the arena. And after a couple of minutes, all the ink Naruto made was used up. So Naruto then threw all 3 of his kunais at Neji, with him avoiding 2, and for the last one, Neji threw his kunai, which when they collided, they fell to the ground. Then the two go for one final clash, with Naruto going for a punch as hard as he could, using his tentacles to give him a push, and Neji goes for another rotation. And when the attacks collided, it made a huge explosion in the arena, launching dirt everywhere. And when the dirt settled, the people in the stands saw 2 human-shaped holes in the ground, and after less than a minute, Neji started to pull himself out of his hole. He then started to walk over to Naruto's hole, to see if he was able to continue, and when he looks into it, he sees an unconscious Naruto. Then the main examiner started to count down again, but right when he got to 2, something appeared right under Neji, and before he was able to dodge the attack, Naruto was able to hit Neji in the chin, knocking him to the ground, and Naruto was labeled the winner of the match, since when Neji hit the ground, he was unable to get back up, since he used too much chakra when he was fighting Naruto. So now we skip past Shikamaru's and Temari's match, and it will end the same with Shikamaru giving up, making Temari the winner. So now it's time for the match between Sasuke and Gaara, and when the match was supposed to start, Sasuke wasn't there yet, so the main examiner started to count down to end the match. But when he got to 3, Sasuke and Kakashi appeared in the middle of the arena, and after Kakashi left the arena, and when everything was ready, the match began. And when the match began, Sasuke ran at Gaara faster than he was a month ago, since he was able to see Lee's movements with his Sharingan, and he was able to copy them. And Sasuke was now strong enough to get through Gaara's sand, and after a couple of minutes, Sasuke was able to deal damage to Gaara, and when he did, Gaara surrounded himself with sand, making a dome around himself, and when Gaara was completely secured, he began to transform. And when Sasuke first saw the sand dome, he tried to break through it, but no matter how hard he tried, Sasuke wasn't able to get through. So he started to run up a wall of the arena, and he put lightning nature chakra into his hand, and when he was ready, he began to run as fast as he could at the dome, and when he got to the dome, he used his electrified hand to pierce through the dome, and when his hand went through the dome, it was just strong enough to make Gaara stop transforming. And when the attack hit, the people in the stands began to fall asleep, signaling the start of the Konoha Crush. And when everyone fell asleep, enemy shinobi began to attack the shinobi that didn't fall for the genjutsu. And the other stand shinobi, while this was going on, got Gaara and they left. And when Sasuke saw them leave, he followed after them. And seeing Sasuke leave, Kakashi tells him to wake Sakura and Naruto to get Shikamaru. Since this time, Naruto was able to react in time, time so he didn't actually fall asleep. And once they got Shikamaru, and when the three got to Kakashi, he summoned a dog named Bakun, and using a strong sense of smell, they were able to follow Sasuke's scent. But after a couple of minutes of following Sasuke's scent, Bakun was able to detect 9 different senses behind the group. He then suspects that their enemy shinobi coming to attack them. And hearing this, Shikamaru comes up with a way so they can stop them from getting all of them. But in exchange, one of them will have to stay behind and possibly die. And since Naruto couldn't come up with a way to persuade Shikamaru stayed behind, and he ran the opposite way while the other 3 kept going. And after a couple of minutes, the 3 were able to catch up to Sasuke. But Sasuke, when they saw him, was laying down face first, with his curse mark spread across half of his body, and Gaara was partially transformed. And when Sakura went to Sasuke to see if he was okay, Gaara extended his sand arm, and he grabbed Sakura by one hand, and he pinned her to a tree. And when she was pinned, he separated his hand from his arm, so she was still stuck to the tree, getting slowly crushed. And Naruto, seeing this, shouts for Gaara to stop, but the moment he says this, Gaara increases his grip on Sakura. So Naruto then gathered up the 8 tails of chakra, so he now has 2 chakra tentacles, and when they were formed, he began to run at Gaara, and the two began to fight, with Gaara using his sand arms to shoot out sand shuriken and to hit Naruto. But using his tentacles, he was able to push himself out of the way of the attacks, and by the end of those couple of minutes, Gaara transformed even more, so he was mostly Shukaku with only his feet human. And while they were fighting, Naruto was thinking about how similar he and Gaara were, so by the end of that train of thought, he decides that he won't just save his friends in the village, but he will also save Gaara. And while he was avoiding the attacks, he saw that Sakura was beginning to suffocate, and seeing this, he knew he needed to end the fight quickly, so he tried to summon Gamabunta, but when he did the summoning jutsu, he summoned a small toad instead. Then Gaara extended his arm to try to hit the 2, but Naruto was able to grab the toad in time, and he jumped above the arm, Naruto then flung himself back a couple of branches. And when he landed, Naruto put down the toad, and when he was secured, Naruto jumped back where he was originally. He then made 999 shadow clones, and they fired a barrage of attacks, using their tentacles to hit Gaara. And by the end of the barrage, Gaara was starting to fall apart, but after a couple of seconds, Gaara started to surround himself with sand, and he began to grow, so the Shukaku was fully formed, with Gaara at the creature's forehead. And when he was there, he used a jutsu to make himself fall asleep, unleashing the real Shukaku. And when he was free, Shukaku started to surround Naruto in sand, slowly crushing him. But before he could suffocate, Naruto used the summoning jutsu, and this time he was able to summon Gamabunta. And when Naruto was on Gamabunta's head, he told him to help him fight Shukaku. But hearing that he was being told to fight Shukaku of the sand, he didn't want to fight. But after being told by Gamakichi that Naruto saved from Shukaku, he decided to help. So the 2 creatures started to fight, and after a while, Gamabunta tells Naruto that he needs to transform the both of them into something with claws. And since Naruto doesn't know what the 9 tails looks like, he uses most of the last of his chakra to transform the 2 of them into a giant wolf. And while the new wolf Gamabunta had its claws and teeth in Shukaku, Naruto jumped on top of Shukaku, and he ran towards the asleep Gaara. And before he could be stopped, Naruto was able to punch Gaara in the face, and when he made contact, Gaara woke up. And since he did, Shukaku got suppressed back into Gaara, making the sand monsters start to crumble and blow away. And after a couple of seconds, the 2 began to fall, so when they landed, the 2 were injured. And Naruto only had so much chakra to move around a bit longer, and Gaara was on the ground unable to move. And when Naruto sees Gaara, he walks over to him, and he says that he forgives him. But right after that, he then threatens him, saying that if he does this again, he will kill him without any hesitation. Then Naruto walked to a nearby tree and he passed out from exhaustion. And when he woke up, he found himself in a hospital room with Kakashi reading a book next to him. And when he noticed that he was awake, Kakashi tells Naruto everything that happened. And a couple of days later, the village held a funeral for the 3rd Hokage. And that's where I'm going to leave the what if. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.